welcome to the Master Analyser. Pleasure to have your company. We are covering the 28th game of the tournament, which is India versus New Zealand. And I'm sure, as we'll discover through the course of the analysis, we have some sad Indian faces and we will have some very, very happy New Zealand faces. But firstly, thank you to our sponsors, Launch Tea, wonderful children's hitting tea product from Australia, Ready, Steady, Go Kids, fantastic early development program for young children between 1.5 and 6 years old prior to going to school. Our eco-friendly Indian company, as well as Adzguru, the advertising and marketing support to our broadcast. Also to all our cricket and cricket heroes for their data and analysis. So let's go to the scoreboards. So we see from the scoreboards that New Zealand won the toss, sent India into bat, which is quite usual in this tournament to date. India made a couple of selection changes with Kishan coming in the top of the order, replacing Sharma, who moved to number 3, and possibly that was to counteract Bolt's swing bowling at the top of the order. But it did not really work, and neither did the rest of the Indian batting lineup right through the innings. And we see that apart from 2 small partnerships between Rahul and Sharma in the second wicket, where a partnership of 24, and then similarly a partnership of 24 later in the innings between Pandya and Jadeja. They were the only really substantial partnerships that India put together through their innings, and their innings terminated at 7 for 110. Really a very, very disappointing batting effort from India. Why was this? I think a number of things, but what were really the change of momentum moments was that India seemed intent on trying to get that ball over the boundary. And consequently, most of their wickets fell, apart from Pant, who swung lustily across the line, fell deep trying to clear the boundary. But that was brought about by some very, very good partnership bowling by the New Zealand outfit. And in particular, when we go past the power play where New Zealand had restricted India to 2 for 35, in that next 7 to 16 over mark, India were unable to find the boundary very often at all, lots of dot balls, and New Zealand bowlers, Sodhi and Santner, the 2 spinners, really strangled the Indian batting lineup, aided by Milne and Southey in that period. But it was just very, very difficult for India to really get on top of that New Zealand attack. So by the 16th over, the score had only trickled to 5 for 75. And really it was very difficult then for New Zealand to mount any India to mount any decent sort of total to chase. So India again were in a position where they had to chase the game. They had to try to dismiss as many New Zealand batsmen as possible in that power play. But Guptill batted beautifully, even though it was only a short cameo. Mitchell chimed in as well. And Kohli was forced into using Chakravarti and Bumrah, plus then trying to bring Jadeja into that power play to seek wickets. And unfortunately, it did not work for them. In fact, that was again a real change of momentum moment, I thought, where Jadeja in the 6th over went for 14 at the hands of Daryl Mitchell. Mitchell then and Williamson put together a very, very good second wicket partnership of 72, which took them to 2 for 96 in the 13th over, and the game was all but done by that stage, and then finished off by Williamson and Conway. So all in all, the story really lay in the fragility is not quite the right word, but the uncertainty of the Indian batting lineup. It really hasn't been able to get going in this tournament so far, and it's being exposed by different types of bowling and bowling strategies. In this case, with New Zealand, they used their pace well, but it was the spinners of Santner, the left arm orthodox, and Sodhi, the wrist spin, that really put the shackles or tied the shackles around the Indian batting wrists and bat to prevent them scoring. So that's something that India need to rectify very, very quickly, with only 3 games to go, and their chances of qualifying into the semi-finals becoming slimmer and slimmer. Well, as we cross to Brad Hogg, we mentioned earlier that there'll be lots of unhappy people in India, lots of unhappy children, but for those children to be happier into the future, our sponsor, Ready, Steady, Go Kids, is a program just made for them. It is for 1.5 to 6-year-old children, preschoolers, prior to going to school, to give them physical development so that, one, they can enjoy their sport and physical activity far more, but also prepare themselves for going on to school. So if you want to know more about that, please have a look at the links below. But also there is business opportunities to become a franchise owner of this Australian product, Ready, Steady, Go Kids, scientifically designed by physios and occupational therapists. It is very well recognised in Australia, over 200 centres around the country, and now into 12 to 15 countries all around the world. So if you want to become part of that Ready, Steady, Go family in India, look forward to joining up by becoming a franchise owner. But now let's head on over to Brad and get a bit more in-depth analysis of last night's game. Yes, and here we are again, joined by Brad Hogg, our specialist from the shores of Western Australia, and certainly a specialist in the world of cricket, T20 cricket in particular. So welcome, Brad. Lovely to see you here again. And no seagulls in the background this morning.
Yeah, no, I went down to Mandurah for a try and get a quick surf in. There were no waves, so a bit disappointing, but it was a good weekend down there and finished off. I saw some humpback whales flowing past the coast down in Mandurah, so they're down there berthing with their calves out at the moment. So something spectacular, John. I couldn't get any photos because, I could get some photos, but they're not worth putting up on Facebook or anything like that because you couldn't really get the full gist of it. But it was beautiful.
Well, obviously you had a whale of a time down there, Brad, but spectacular, as you said, and spectacular with the game last night. So Indian fans very, very glum and disappointed, I'm sure, and the Kiwis are cock-a-hoop. So what did you make of the game?
Look, before we started with the game, you look at the selections, and both teams took a risk by changing their makeup. New Zealand went in with Milne and one less batter. So India went in there with Hardik Pandya, and they brought in Thakur just to give some extra batting depth, which I thought was a good move. But it was when they changed their batting order, which was the crucial change of the game, and batting first, they were under pressure. So either team batting first was going to be under pressure. So if New Zealand batted first, I thought India would have had more advantage because it's harder to bat first in these wickets over here because of the dew. But changing your top 3 is crucial. You don't change your top 3 in your second game when it's a big game. You rely heavily on Rohit Sharma, Rahul and Virat Kohli out the top to make the bulk of your runs. And what you did, you put Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli under pressure batting later in the game when they're weaker starters against spin. So really, they took their strength away. And for me, at the start of the tournament, they should have opened with Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma up front with Rahul coming out 4 because both of those particular players, Rohit and Virat, like the ball coming on and like to pierce the field more so than going over the top early on. So they've really taken the advantage away from themselves, India, in their selection process.
Yeah, and it did seem not to work for them because obviously they lost Kishan early and then never really recovered. They got a brief partnership between Rahul and Sharma at 24 in that second wicket. But wickets just continued to tumble right through the innings, and even Kohli seemed to play an unusual shot for him, I guess, against who was it? Sodhi, yeah.
Yeah, Sodhi, yeah.
So
when you look at that, when you look at that,
you're interested in talking about both New Zealand spinners in this case, but particularly Sodhi.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly right. Before we get to the spinners, Ishan Kishan played a shot that was there to hit, and he's just unlucky he got caught out in the deep.
True.
But the maturity of Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, you could see the pressure under them. that they were under. And Sodhi, for me, was the weak link for New Zealand. Sodhi was the one where India could really get on top. And I just thought, watching Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, they showed they played him with disrespect. They just, I won't use another term because it's probably a bit too rough on them, but just the way that they played casually against them, played shots that weren't there, and well done to Sodhi. And look, when you look at teams, remember through the 2003 World Cup when Warney was gone, I felt like I was a weak link of Australia there. I feel that Sodhi has stepped up here, and he knew that he was going to be the match winner or the change in the game last night. And the way that he bowled was probably the best I've seen him bowl in international cricket. He just got the ball in the right areas, and he made the Indian batsmen take the risk, and it paid off.
It did. And I think one of the other things to note is the way that Williamson handles him too. So in this game, as we've seen with the spinner coming on after the power play, like a Zampa, they bowl 8, 10, 12, 14, something like that. And last night, Williamson used him in the 8th over, then held him back, bowled him in the 11th over, held him back,